Hey there, I'm Jan Ditchfield, the host of No BS Business School. Before I started working with Adam, I was caught in the post-launch frustration zone. I couldn't figure out how to make my podcast grow, and it certainly wasn't making me any sales. My business was doing well, but my podcast wasn't part of my funnel. If anything, it was more like a chore than it was something that was bringing me revenue. Within 3 weeks of working with Adam, I doubled my downloads and brought an additional $6,500 in revenue into my business from my podcast. Because of everything that Adam taught me and helping me get really clear on understanding the systems, the strategies, and the funnel that was going to work for my audience, I'm now tracking to put an additional 6 figures into my business by the end of next year from my podcast. I am a fan of Adam's for life, and one of the best decisions I've ever made in my business was working with him. If you've been struggling to get your podcast to grow, if you're struggling to figure out how to monetize it, if you just need some guidance from somebody who really is in your corner, Adam's your guy.
What's up, Pod Pals? It's your buddy Adam, and you're listening to Podcasting Business School. It's the show where I teach podcasters simple strategies to help you make more money with your online business. Today, we're talking about how to create simple offers that will help convert podcast listeners into paying clients. This is an important topic. Hopefully, you're fired up about it just like me. Before we dive in, quick 60 seconds here to let you know that if you are ready to tag in and get some help with your podcasting journey from podcast launch to growth to the listener to client conversion process we're going to talk about here today. Next great step would be my podcast profit potential discovery call. That is a free 20-minute session with me where we're going to analyze what your next logical step will be depending on your pain point. And then if it makes sense, we'll discuss options to work together. If I can help you accelerate that process a little bit, then you can link up with me and we'll discuss those options. So the link for that is in the show notes, the podcast profit potential discovery call. All right, let's dive in here. I've got 4 different levels of complexity with offers. I think one of the big mistakes that most podcasters make, as far as I guess this applies to online business owners in general, is our offers are too complex from the beginning. And we don't realize this because nobody really explains this. All we do is we listen to podcasts and we listen to, Smart Passive Income, and we see Pat Flynn doing all these things. We're like, well, I guess that's how it's done. I should be doing things like Pat Flynn. And that's what I definitely did that early on, where I was viewing people like Amy Porterfield. Like, okay, Amy's doing these big launches quarterly. She's doing these giant courses and Facebook group things. And I just kind of patterned myself after that. And it was too complex too early for me. Obviously, Amy's in a different stratosphere business-wise, and especially when I'm like a podcaster with 5 episodes and no email list. So I'm going to go through 4 different levels that are kind of ascending in complexity here. Just because my promise with this show is to give you simple strategies to help you make more money with that online business. All right. So level 1, super, super simple. But here's the thing. I think with this level 1 strategy, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, Pod Pals, but I've seen person after person being able to create 6 figures of income with this just level 1 strategy. I've done it myself. All right. So don't feel like you have to ascend up the complexity ladder here. I just want to kind of paint a picture, and you're going to figure out where you're at now and kind of what the next logical step might be. So level 1, the first step with the level 1 strategy here is creating one simple MVO, minimum viable offer. All right. You don't need to create some big complex 50 video course. You don't need to have this giant behemoth of an offer. A minimum viable offer. What that normally looks like when we do a lot of offer creation inside my online business academy for podcasters. That's one of the big focus points. And I'm always challenging them to make it as simple as possible and kind of as nimble and flexible as possible. If you create a 50 video course on one pain point, that's a lot of time invested. And, I've done that before myself. And then it's like, I chose the wrong pain point. My listeners are not interested in that at all. They are not interested in solving that pain point. Like, been there, done that. First 3 years of my podcasting journey with my health brand, I did that over and over and over, and it really sucked. So what I like to do, especially with my clients, is create a really flexible consultation-based offer. So it often looks like the time span with different price points could be a 14-day, a 28-day, a 90-day program. So we can have a variety of price points to fit people's budgets. And it'll involve some one-on-one coaching, which I know is not scalable, but if we're making $0, let's start making some dollars before we even think about scaling. So it'll be some one-on-one coaching, a certain amount of time frame, maybe some Voxer app messaging access or email access, maybe some office hours access. I recently did an episode about that. And then some Google Docs or sharing, maybe a few recorded training videos or some screen recorded videos. But it doesn't need to be this big online course plus coaching hybrid offer thing. I mean, I really would encourage you to not create a giant online course for your first offer, especially as you're just getting started. All right. And we'll get to online course creation, things like that here in a minute. So the first step of a level 1 strategy here with converting podcast listeners into clients, create a minimum viable offer. And the nice thing about this MVO is that you can be nimble. Like I said, you can solve various pain points. So I could do I do consultation-based offers for podcast launch, for podcast growth, for podcast monetization. I challenge you to go to my website and find any of those. They aren't on my website. All right. I drive people to discovery calls. I figure out what their pain point is, what their budget is for solving that offer, for solving that pain point, I should say. And then I say, okay, well, this offer and this amount of time together and this amount of all the different bells and whistles, like I can be nimble on a discovery call, and it happens week after week after week. I still do this. All right. And it's about solving the pain point as fast as possible within that person's budget. So you don't have to create a consultation, like a 90-day consulting package on just one thing. And you don't have to brand it and name it or anything. Like I do not have a package named the 90-day podcast launch consultation package. I just talk to people. They're like, oh, I really need help with my launch. And they're like, well, I don't want to do a course or a group program or whatever. I want to work with you one-on-one. I'm like, all right, cool. What's our budget? All right, I know what the budget is. That's how much time I'll say, okay, well, your budget fits my 45-day program or my 90-day program or whatever. And I can customize that experience for them, solve the problem, and I get paid to solve problems. All right. So stop overthinking it. Create a simple MVO. You don't need a big sales page. You don't need branding and naming and logos and any of that stuff. Like I'm 10 years into the game. I still don't have that. All right. And this works. All right. That's why this is the level 1, very, very simple offer. Minimum viable offer. Next goal at level 1 is establish expert positioning on your show. All right. We have to use my 2/3 content rule. 2/3 of your episodes will establish you as an expert. That means 1/3 or less can be interview episodes. The other 2/3 or more needs to be solo episodes, coaching style episodes, or case study episodes where you are positioned as the expert. All right. I talk about that a lot. The next part of this strategy, the level 1 strategy, is a call to action on your show to a discovery call. At this level, I wouldn't talk about anything else. I would 100% just drive to a discovery call. I still do this. 80% plus of the time on this show, the call to action is podcast profit potential discovery call. I did that like 8 minutes ago, right? There's an example for you. So drive to discovery calls, focus on that. With this strategy, you aren't trying to send them to your Instagram. You're trying to send them, to anything that you're trying to sell at this point. All right. Get them on a discovery call, and then we can be nimble with that MVO and solve pain points and just hammer the repetition of the discovery call, intro, outro, call to action. Now we're going to leverage again that discovery call to sell the MVO. That's the whole point here. Now, one note, eventually your minimum viable offer will transform into one or more signature offers. That's exactly what happened for me, where, I was doing a lot of customized consulting programs on listener to client conversion, the topic of the day. And I was like, all right, I'm covering some topics over and over and over again. I'm going to film some videos that cover those topics. That way I've got an online course resource that I can leverage so that when I meet with my clients, it's more about optimizing those strategies instead of just teaching those strategies. I can be more efficient with my time and their time. So eventually that MVO became a course plus coaching signature offer. That's now my podcast listener to client conversion program. Another example, I did a lot of consultations on launch stuff and just me teaching people on camera, kind of figured out the lessons that needed to be taught there over and over and over again, made that into an online course. Now I've got online course plus coaching, hybrid signature offer, the podcast launch blueprint. All right. So that will evolve, but you have to get in the trenches and notice the difference. I didn't create the big course first about the blah, blah, blah cool program that I thought was neat and interesting that my clients didn't want, that my listeners didn't want. All right. So instead, I created a minimum viable offer, did a lot of one-on-one coaching, consultation, different price points, different time spans together. And then I was like, all right, I'm consistently hitting these points when I'm teaching people. Now let's create that course that teaches those. And then when we meet up, we're more optimized with our time together to go in and make sure that we're getting the most out of all of the strategies. All right. That's the level 1 simple offer. I really don't think you even need to go past this if you don't want to. You can do really, really well with this. Although I highly recommend at least dipping your toes into the water of the level 2 strategy. So we're just going to add one simple layer. For each level we ascend here, one simple layer. All right. The next level, we're just going to add in email list growth. I feel like that is the next really important thing as we go from level 1 strategy into level 2. So we keep everything the same offer wise, but now you guys know I'm a huge fan of a high value newsletter. We got a boot camp going on right now. If you're just finding me, you missed it. Maybe we'll do it again. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But this high value newsletter is the key to my email list growth. My high value newsletter is putting between 400 and 500 people on my email list every single month, which is great. All right. So with this level 2 layer that we're putting on to the level 1 strategy, we're going to really start focusing on growing our email list, hopefully with a high value newsletter. And now we've got another level of a CTA, another call to action layer inside of that email communication. And I think 80% of the time you need to be driving to a discovery call. 20% of the time we're going to sell. Here's my new-ish philosophy on selling. It's a little bit harder to sell directly from the podcast. Why is that? Well, this is an advantage of podcasting and a disadvantage. So our listeners are doing something else while they listen. And I've talked about this before, but for you guys right now, there's probably less than 1% of you that are just sitting in a dark room focusing on what I'm saying. You're probably driving, running, walking your dog, driving your kids somewhere, sitting at football practice. You're doing something else. All right. So it's harder to sell from an audio, even I'm like, link in the show notes, go buy this thing, limited time special deal. You're much less likely to do that from an audio podcast. But we're planting seeds there, it's much easier to sell off of an email because you're sitting there reading. People are used to clicking and buying from that text-based format. That's much more likely to happen. So, I do a lot more selling directly from my email communication, from my newsletter, whether it's hyperlinking something or doing just a straight up sales email. All right. And usually it's about 80-20. So 80% of the time I'm still promoting, hey, if you're struggling with this, and this pain point, if you're struggling with launch, growth, monetization, hop on a podcast, profit potential discovery call. That's my messaging 80% of the time on my newsletter. Then 20% of the time I'll send an email that says, hey, I'm launching this new program or this new thing is opening or a direct promotion for something. All right. That's the next layer. Simple. I think that we can handle this level 1, level 2. All right, I'm feeling pretty good about that. Now let's add in level 3. This is where we're going to add in a recurring revenue stream. All right. So adding complexity, and these may be weeks apart, months apart, years apart. The goal isn't to get through these levels as fast as possible. It's to get through these levels, if it makes sense, first of all, to get through those levels. But if it does, it's to get through them effectively and as it makes sense. All right. Level 3, we're going to add in a recurring revenue stream. I'm a big fan of recurring revenue streams because, when we have consulting based offers, there's a beginning and an end. And Sometimes there's renewals there and things like that. But if you only have that MVO with the consulting income, it's one-on-one, and we're always looking for new clients. It's ABC, always be closing. You got to be closing new deals. With a recurring revenue stream like a membership or group coaching model, that's a month-to-month income. It's more focused on keeping those people happy. If you've got a base, there will be people that, there's churn. It's called churn when people quit your membership. And that will happen every month. It's always sad, but there's various reasons for that. It's not because you're a bad coach or anything like that. Sometimes people's spouses lose their jobs or life happens. All right. And we focus a lot with just maintaining client satisfaction, and the reward we get back is a recurring revenue stream. So with this level 3 strategy, we start to layer that in. Okay, we've got a membership, we've got a group coaching program. And the cool thing is, this membership or group coaching program, and to me, that's the same thing. You just call it whatever you want. You call it a mastermind. I don't care. It's one to many. So we're scaling our effort a little bit. It's no longer one-on-one. We still have that option. Maybe we raise our prices on our one-on-one consulting a little bit at this point. But now we've got a one-to-many option. We're scaling our time, scaling our impact a little bit, and getting recurring revenue. And you can have one group coaching program and have an ascension model that operates at different price points. I'm kind of in the process of doing this with my online business academy for podcasters. So right now there's only one tier, one price point, but I'm building up the base membership and really dialing in me being able to solve their pain points effectively and efficiently, getting great results, and just kind of making sure that I'm being efficient and effective with everything that I'm putting into that. So once I feel good about that, I'm going to create probably 3 tiers, and there'll be 3 different price points. And the people that are currently in there will get automatically put up into the top price point, but I never raise prices on people. So they got in early, they invested in me early. It stays the same. They ascend up, and they'll have 3 different levels with different participation levels of, okay, at tier 1, you're just going to get the group coaching calls every month and some bonus resources. At level 2, you get everything that I create, online courses and the whole thing, office hours, Voxer group, blah, blah, blah. And then the top tier will involve some one-on-one coaching, maybe a live event. All right. So you can have one thing with multiple pricing tiers, and we're not creating 3 side-by-side offers. We're creating one offer, and they can ascend up, and they all intermix. And guess what happens when people from different tiers intermix? They have a goal of like, okay, that person's one tier above me. That's the next goal. That's the next level of my journey. All right. So keep that in mind as we go into level 3. We're adding a recurring revenue stream. And I really do want you thinking about ascension levels. And you don't need to start that out. If you have 4 people, you don't need an ascension model in place. So get 10, 15, 20 people. Now we can start looking at creating that ascension model. All right. Keep it simple. Keep it simple, Pod Pals. All right. So that's level 3. Now level 4, we're going to layer in one more thing. All right. This is where I think it's a good idea to add in what I would refer to as lead attraction events. All right. So now we're doing webinars, workshops, challenges free that attract people into your world and get to experience you as a coach a little bit. And I want you to think about doing these. You got to start simple, as always. Do not go, all right. My pod pal Amanda Walker does a webinar every single week. I don't want you to start out doing a webinar every single week, especially if you got 12 people on your email list and 5 clients. This doesn't make sense. Maybe you go once a quarter, and you just got to get practicing. You'll have almost no one show up for the first one. Just know that. All right. I had very few people show up for my freebie stuff like this for a long time. So don't get your feelings hurt. It happens to us all. But the good news is you probably suck at doing webinars when you first get going as well. So you're going to get better with a small audience and build up, and your skills will improve as your audience increases in size. And there you go. Direct correlation. So start with maybe a quarterly free challenge, workshop, webinar. To me, again, same thing. And then increase frequency as it makes sense. So right now, what I do is 1 per month, usually the last week of the month. I'm doing some sort of a free workshop, 90-minute workshop. I promoted my email list. I promoted on social media. Sometimes I'll mention it on the show, but a lot of times I don't even do that. I won't distract from my podcast Profit Potential Discovery Call, CTA. So quarterly, and that again, this gives people a sample of what it's like to work directly with you. It gets them on your email list if they aren't already, and then you can upsell into your membership. You can drive to a discovery call. You can drive into an offer. And some people have kind of an entry level offer at this point too, where like, oh, it's a kind of a sampler price offer, or maybe you give them a free trial into the lowest tier of your recurring revenue stream. But this is just, again, that next level of complexity. All right. So I feel good about the last 20 minutes that we've spent together. Again, this is really, really simple. And reminder, the goal is not to speed through these levels as fast as possible. You want to do it as it makes sense. If you need help figuring all this out, like this is where tagging somebody in and also spending time with other people that are doing this is super helpful. I did not have that back in 2015. That's why I struggled through the podcasting and online business desert for 3 freaking years, wandering around just blind, not knowing what to do and how to do it. So if that's you, again, hop on that podcast Profit Potential Discovery Call link. Let's talk about your pain points. Let's talk about what I think your next best step solution is. And then if it makes sense to do something like my online business academy for podcasters or something else, then we'll talk about that. All right. That is all I've got for you, Pod Pals. Keep it simple. Do not overcomplicate. Do not hustle through these levels. Go nice and slow and steady and strategic and methodical, and you will see better results. And that's what I want for you, Pod Pals. That is all for today. I'm going to send you out into the world wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. We'll see you next week. If you need a little bit of help with your podcast launch, growth, or monetization strategy, head on over to my website, www.podcastingbusiness.school, and get signed up for a free podcast Profit Potential Discovery Call. During this free 20-minute discovery call session, I'm going to analyze your podcasting brand and tell you where I think you're missing on an opportunity for profits. Next, I'm going to tell you exactly what I suggest that you do as your next step. If I've got an offer that would help you accelerate the process, we can discuss working together as well. So head on over to my website, www.podcastingbusiness.school, and click on the Discovery Call button to schedule your free Podcast Profit Potential Discovery Call.